Okay, we'd like to go ahead and reconvene. And myself, President of Association of Cuban Engineers, and Victor, President of the Cuban American Association of Civil Engineers. We're going to provide a few thank yous, a few closing remarks, and that's going to be followed by Jose, who will also provide some additional thank yous. I'd like to start by thanking everybody in the audience, all of you who are interested in Cuba infrastructure issues. We have a lot of esteemed individuals. I'd like to acknowledge Joaquin Pujals of the Association for the Study of the Cuban Economy, who's here, famous for his newsletter. Thank you. I also know that we had some wonderful presentations by our students. It was amazing what they were able to accomplish, but a lot of this, the underpinning of their accomplishments, comes from home, and I'd like to have all the parents stand so we could thank the parents and for their support. I also like to thank the judges. It was an incredible amount of work to read through all the documents and the time that's spent here and prior, and we greatly appreciate all the experience that you bring to this competition. We also like to thank the mentors for the various student groups. I know we have Miguel here, Armando Perez, if you could stand as well. And we're also very proud and thankful for our students for all the time that you've put into these projects. A lot of you have worked hard over winter break, giving up your free time to do this. I even heard stories about working on presentations as you're driving down from Gainesville and not sleeping last night. So really appreciate all the effort that you've put forth in making this a successful challenge. Victor's going to provide some additional insights.
Thank you, Helena. It's always so gratifying when we started this 3 years ago, and it started with Cristina and Jose as our initiating class, alumni class, and they've run with this program with a passion, and I want to recognize Cristina and Jose. Would you mind standing up? They're outstanding, and I always like to close with a kind of, it's unprepared because it's all based on what I heard today, but as an engineer, as a Cuban, as a father who's still paying for some college tuition, what we try to do is do a program not only that appeals to our Cuban passion, but also to prepare you not only in your college career, you're getting prepared for a job. At least that's what we as parents hope. And so what we structure the process, as Cristina says, as we face in real life, preparing, applying, submitting your proposals, and then making the presentations to come out first. Today, every presentation sort of hit a personal note, and then it hit a technical professional note. And so I'd like to recap just some of my quick thoughts on that. And to me, what was impressive was we started with a presentation that said, well, what's a Cuba challenge? And they were very innovative in answering questions. And I thought that was very good because you all went through that. And we ended with a presentation, which is the one that tears us up in the papers and personally and in the family, is, can this government be resolved to do better, or do we need a complete change? And so, that kind of started playing into that, and I'll wrap up with some thoughts on that. But the first presentation asked, what's resilience? And I thought, damn, that's Cubans. They're resilient, So to me, that was the answer right there. But it also says, I'm a mechanical engineer dealing with civils. And there were so many mechanical engineers, and I thought back, gee, I was a mechanical engineer for 2.5 years at Georgia Tech before I decided to change to civil. So he's on the wrong side of the house, But that presentation talked about wood, and I thought that was very creative. And I think back, I remember, seeing a bohío. What's a bohío? It's made off the sides of a palm tree with wood, and that I thought was a very creative presentation. So I really liked that one, and the next presentation started by talking about ciguatera. Well, Dr. Armando Perez, I remember when he got ciguatera, and it took him 3 or 4 years before he actually found out that that's what he had. And it was, I'm sure it drew, just up his spines. He must have been, thinking about that. And then how applicable that technology of algae treatment that you could I did a lot of work in Puerto Rico in water and wastewater. I could see how that would apply here and apply there. So I thought that was very good. Then we went on and Eric starts by saying, well, I'm from Fort Lauderdale. Hell, I graduated from Strand High School, Fort Lauderdale, so that hit me home. and then we talk about water quality, which I think every 3 years, Helena, we've been studying the Almendares and the Ejército Rebelde, so I almost feel like I know what they're talking about. So I really like that. And then we talked about UV and in a hospital environment. And so my oldest daughter and son both work, son-in-law both work at a hospital. And the first thing they do when they come home is wash their hands, And I said, well, gee, I'm glad to see that, there's other disinfection going on in that environment. So I can't wait to talk to them about it. But as all papers, I looked at the technical, the economic, and the needs behind issues. And UV, although I'm used to UV from the water and wastewater industry, and I'm fascinated by that technology, I was trying to always relate when they were talking about the air and joules per second, or what intensity, I think, Pete, you asked that question. I thought that was very good. We then talked about, oil, and I think of the oils for doctors issue. There's been a lot in the papers about Brazil and how controversial that program is there. And I call it modern day white coat slavery. So I was very touched by the talk about that. But then when I get into the technology, where do they put the plant, Cienfuegos? I mean, that's got to be like the heart, because that's where the Russian nuclear power plant was going to go. So I thought that was very creative to spot it there. And who knows what technology, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, who would have been heard about fracking? And today, that's it's kind of like made us almost like oil-free in the United States, the way that's going. So I think there is a lot to be thought about that. And of course, I grew up in a finca, so the minute they talk about finca, I'm thinking about, being in a cattle farm and a beef farm when I was a young kid in Cuba. And then, the whole issue of corruption. And that, you recall last year I said, what is all this about? All this about is MTV was a famous phrase I use, mejora tu vida. And that's what we're behind. That's what our infrastructure is about. We want to mejorar la vida of the people in Cuba. And so the real question is there a government that's going to spend their money on maintaining themselves in power and their families in power? Or are they going to divert the money to mejorar la vida de la gente? And that's what this is all about. Thank you very much.
And I just had a few more thank yous. Again, I want to thank Jose and Christina for a wonderful job. They didn't have the benefit of competing in a formal competition like this one. They competed in other venues, and it's wonderful as to how you were able to come up with this process, and we really appreciate all you've done. I also like to acknowledge our sponsors again. Our university sponsors, which are the Center for Latin American Studies and ICAS. Also, I don't know if everyone knows, the reason we have the University of Florida symbol there is because we have Gator alumni who are contributing towards the travel costs of the UF students, and we're very thankful for all their contributions. And then also our company sponsors, AT&T, APCT, BCC, and then Click Event Online, who is also contributing. I'd like to also acknowledge the members of both the Association of Cuban Engineers and the Cuban American Association of Civil Engineers. Can you please stand so we can also acknowledge our members? Those members who are members of the CIC committee remain standing. So if you're a member of the CIC committee, Cuba Infrastructure Committee, okay, we're all here. And I'd like to thank the leadership of Rogelio, Eric, and Arnelio, who are the three in the back. So this was a huge team effort, and again, thanks to everyone who participated.